I occasionally come across some video clips on social media of obscene brutality against children. Some of them border on madness. The things that people will do to children are unbelievable. Weren't they caught on camera, no one would believe them. When such clips circulate on social media, there is almost unanimous approval of the act. Many commentators have no remorse because, as they say, it had happened to them. I fail to understand the logic that justifies something happening to others because it happened to you. That it happened to you doesn't make it right, and that you feel you needed it doesn't mean that everyone else does. The matter arising here is, faced with new and modern challenges on nurturing a digital generation, do the old ways such as caning offer us a solution? Welcome. This is Matters Arising. When responding to the so-called issues of discipline among our modern children, the calls for the reintroduction of corporal punishment grows louder. This reflects the unimaginative and primitive way that we as a society seeks to solve the emergent challenges facing our parenting and teaching. We deal with these challenges with a cynical simplicity, quick fix inefficiency, and a hopeless denial that hardly ever has a chance of providing us with a lasting solution. We are dealing with a complex challenge of youth growing up in a changed and a changing world. And the solution being proposed is beat them. First, a general comment on caning. Beating children is primitive and reprehensible. All manners of defense, including religious ones, have been proffered to justify it. I have always maintained that we beat children just because we can. If caning is supposed to be a method of behavior change, adults deserve it more than children. I have come across adults who behave in more primitive and stupid ways than any child ever can. Adults behave foolishly, stupidly, childishly, everywhere, in offices, in churches, in homes, in matatus, on queues, in social media, on the roads, everywhere. We don't beat these adults because we can't, not because their stupidity doesn't call for it. Again, the same children we terrorize in their childhood years terrorize us in their teenage and early adult years, and some way into their adulthood, in ways that make their earlier childhood years feel like heaven, and yet we cannot beat them. We would beat them when they were younger because we could. In other words, beating children is a form of bullying, the old schoolyard bullying. When children get older, we cannot do it, not because they get better and wiser, although they generally do, but because they get bigger. Next time you hit your child, think about it this way. So, what is the problem with our children? To answer that question, we need to ask, what is the problem with our society? What is the problem with our schools? And what is the problem with our homes? And the answer is staring right at us. Inability to accept and embrace change. Politically, Kenyan society has changed in fundamental and far-reaching ways since 1990. It may not be the change we anticipated or desired in character and extent, but we have changed unrecognizably. There is something to be said about the fact that the political class has bastardized the change, politicizing most institutions, including educational ones, and institutionalizing impunity and general bad manners. This cannot be ignored, and I will come to it later. Technologically, the world has changed significantly over the last 3 decades, yet schools have hardly changed in any recognizable way. If you go back to the high school you attended 40, 30, or 20 years ago, you will find that nothing much has changed about it. It is as if schools are frozen in a time capsule as the rest of society changes and moves on. The result is a huge disconnect between the world as our students experience it in school and the world as they experience it outside school. A modern educationist recently lamented that every time I pass by a jail or a school, I cannot help but pity the people inside. As the world has gotten more complicated, the role of parents and teachers in helping the youth navigate it has gotten less and less sophisticated, and not more and more sophisticated. The roles themselves have gotten more confused and confusing, not more clear, not more structured, and not more defined. In earlier times, we used to parent and teach from memory and mimicry. We simply did what our parents and teachers did. Unfortunately, the world has changed so much, and what used to work for the parenting and teaching of yesteryears is not working anymore. Unsure and unequipped, teachers and parents have abdicated. This is not because parents and teachers do not want to play their roles. It is because largely they do not have the new skills and competencies required to do so. This is why you hear when these macabre videos of parents and teachers brutalizing children are circulated on social media, the old generation applaud them, saying it happened to them and there is nothing wrong with it. A more disturbing justification from members of the older generation is that they were caned and that is what molded them. The question is, it molded them into what? In my recent vlog titled "Nice Boys and Girls Never Changed the World," I described what school molded you into being when I said that you survived school means you're a nice boy or girl, that they beat the crap out of you to make you conform, rewarded you for conforming, and punished you heavily for not conforming. By the time you left school, you had been given a template, parameters, and boundaries of how to work, and more importantly, a meek and obedient heart to stay the course, to continue being a good girl and a good boy. Could this be what you are referring to when you say that caning molded you? If indeed it is this something to celebrate? A country of yes men and yes women where change has become virtually impossible because all of us have been drilled to trust and obey. I went on to explain. Change doesn't come from good, conformist, be nice and obey the rules, boys and girls. It comes from the Sultanian misfits, the rebels of our time, the ones we call crazy, the troublemakers, the ones that school couldn't contain. It comes from the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. The ones who cannot stand your mundane rules of social propriety and decorum. The ones who will not hesitate to give the finger to your rules. The ones who disdain the status quo that you so much respect and want to be part of. That caning and authoritarian approaches to school and family turned you into a timid and contained conformist who has learned not to question, learned to patiently and quietly stand in line, to say yes, to obey authority, and to accept, respect, work with, and be liked by the status quo isn't something you should celebrate. Caning should be condemned, at least to the extent it played a role into turning you into such a citizen. There is a more serious concern that should warn us that corporal punishment doesn't work, or at least hasn't worked in this country. If it is supposed to mold us into responsible and disciplined citizens, why do we rank among the most corrupt in the world indices of the most corrupt countries? We have to agree now that corruption at all levels has become endemic to our thoroughly caned and brutalized disciplined society, and we seem helpless to stop it. If caning was supposed to mold us into a disciplined, moral, law-abiding society, then there is only one conclusion we can derive from our now hopelessly corrupt society. Either caning does not work, or you didn't get enough of it. There are, though, several contextual and historical challenges facing teaching and parenting that I can guarantee you they will not be solved by caning. I will be tackling this in part 2 video of this title. Faced with the challenges of modern parenting and teaching, the calls to beat children into line have become increasing. A simple examination of these calls exposes a cynical simplicity, a quick fix inefficiency, and a hopeless denial in the manner in which we seek to deal with modern challenges of parenting and teaching. Many people justify this call with the claim that they were caned and nothing happened to them. And given the general bad manners and corruption that now plagues the country, one would agree nothing happened to mold those who are caned into responsible citizens. Worse still, caning and brutalization turned us into nice boys and girls, incapable of challenging the status quo and causing fundamental positive change in society. In a changed and a changing world, these dubious solutions of the past will not help us solve our problems. We are living in a more sophisticated society than we are equipped for. And I will be tackling this in part 2 of this title. For Matters Arising, I am Professor Wainaina.